The hero of our story lived his life as the weakest member of the demonic clan, despite having been the strongest hero who once saved the world in his previous life. He had been granted a special power and the rare chance to be resurrected twice. Even so, he chose to live this life as a weakling, until the day he saw the leader of his clan, whom he secretly admired, die before his eyes after being betrayed by her husband. In that moment, he chose to die beside her, but not before asking how he might win her heart if they were given another chance at life. After she gave him her answer, he made a vow. In his next life, he would use his power to take revenge and protect the clan leader at any cost. Our story begins within the demon sect, which is under attack by the Murim Union. The sect's soldiers are doing their best to stop the Union from breaching the inner gates. The scene then shifts to our protagonist, Yu Myung, who is rushing toward the palace of the sect leader. He reports that the Murim Union has deployed over 10,000 fighters. A man notices him and seems surprised to see him at such a time. That man's name is San Dojeon. He approaches Yu Myung and questions why he's moving around unguarded in such a dangerous place, urging him to come with him at once. Yu Myung replies that he was heading to the leader's palace. She had remained there after ordering her followers to flee as quickly as possible. San Dojeon responds grimly, saying the situation is dire. At this rate, the defensive line will collapse entirely in less than an hour, so Yu Myung needs to get to safety immediately. But Yu Myung insists that he'll return, though he first needs to understand what's on the leader's mind. San Dojeon realizes he cannot stop him, and Yu Myung dashes off, leaving him behind. He takes a deep breath and mutters that his life has been utterly miserable. Upon reaching the leader's palace, he calls out to see if she's still inside. When there's no reply, he shouts louder, saying he's at the door and urges her to open it immediately. Then he hears her voice, granting him permission to enter. He's genuinely shocked. He hadn't expected her to respond at all. As he places his hand on the door, preparing to push it open, he wonders whether she heard his earlier words, spoken in a tone that might have seemed disrespectful. Nervously, he explains that he hadn't meant any offense, and hopes she understands he was just overwhelmed by the situation. He then pushes the door with all his strength. Eventually, he manages to open it, admitting that it was extremely heavy and that the guards should have remained by the leader's side at the very least. Once inside, he catches his breath, and the leader, her body clearly weakened, tells him that his combat skills are still below those of a third-level fighter. Still panting, he replies that he's just relieved no one else saw him struggling so much to open the door. She confirms this with a slight nod, adding that if any of the elders had heard him speak to her that way, he would have been in serious trouble, implying she'd heard every word. He bows before her in respect. It's then revealed that the leader's name is Yura. She asks what brought the sect's weakest member to seek her out. He responds by asking why she's still here at all. Still sweating, she explains that it's because of the poison. Yu Myung grows furious and demands to know if the one who did this was the traitorous sect leader. That man's name is Han Mobayek, the very person Yura had personally chosen as her husband. But he betrayed her, opened the sect's gates to the Murim Union, and became the leader of the defectors. Yura answers with sorrow, saying that Han Mobayek had told her he'd gone through great hardship just to get close to her. He had earned her trust and her heart, and the reason he poisoned her was so she could experience a fraction of the pain he'd endured. Hearing this, Yu Myung covers his mouth to keep from making a sound, his expression twisting in rage. When Yura noticed what Yu Myung was doing, she smiled and told him he was truly an interesting person. But he replied that there was no time for that kind of talk. He pointed out that she had always been serious, confident, and, in every sense of the word, strict. Yet in her final moments, she had managed to laugh. He then asked if it was already too late for her to recover from the poison. She replied that it likely was, as the toxin had reached her energy core. She added that she could have handled any other kind of poison, but this particular type was the only one she couldn't resist. Yu Myung called out to her and began repeating the word, if, over and over. This angered Yura greatly. She warned him that if she heard him say if one more time, she'd pull him by the tongue, and demanded he get to the point. Gathering his courage, he asked her, if she had the chance to come back to life, what would she do? Yura was taken aback by the question. Yu Myung laughed and reminded her that he had brought this up before, and that in his past life, he had saved the world. She responded with disbelief, saying she couldn't imagine someone like him saving the world. He told her she just needed to pretend it was true, and repeated his question. What would she do if there were still a chance? She asked why he was so insistent on giving her hope, saying that if such a chance truly existed, he should already be busy trying to seize it. He replied that the first thing she needed to know about him was that he couldn't stand betrayal. The second was that this was his way of repaying her for what she had done for him in the past. Yura seemed confused. She had no idea what debt he was referring to. He smiled and told her she didn't need to think too hard about it. He recalled to himself that their first meeting was when he was once considered a candidate to be her husband. Yura smiled back at him, a glimmer of hope appearing on her face, and asked what he would do if she truly came back. He replied that even if she wouldn't remember any of this, he now knew all the traitors who had infiltrated the sect, as well as the Murim Union that dared to attack them. He would use every ounce of his strength to destroy them all, without exception. Then he asked if she had a final wish, promising to remember it and do his best to fulfill it. But Yura's answer caught him off guard. She told him she wanted him to try seducing her. Yu Myung was completely stunned. He told her he was confident in his ability to stop Han Mobayek and prevent him from becoming the leader of the demon sect. But when it came to becoming her husband, that, he wasn't so sure he could manage. He added that he knew she didn't love him. She had told him before that a close relationship between them was impossible, and that romance required mutual desire. He reminded her that when she became the leader of the demon sect, she was a force no one could challenge. She crushed everyone who dared propose to her. The only reason Han Mobayek became the sect leader was because he was the only one who could tolerate her temperament. Yura replied that he didn't have to do anything he didn't want to. but Yu Myung said he never claimed her request was impossible. He stepped closer, and she appeared flustered by his approach. He told her that romantic feelings often begin when one person cares for someone who doesn't return those feelings. Then he smiled and said that since the request came from her, it wouldn't be difficult for him at all. Yura blushed deeply, unable to hide her embarrassment. Yu Myung looked at her intently and said her features were truly beautiful, then asked for just one promise. He wanted her forgiveness if he had ever spoken poorly of her in the past. Dropping to his knees, he held her hands and told her that if she had any weaknesses, she should share them with him, so he could use them when he returned to the past. But she seemed visibly annoyed and warned that if their conversation leaked in any way, she would make sure he paid dearly. She added that she would say what needed to be said only once, and he had better listen carefully. After she shared all her vulnerabilities, Yu Myung burst out laughing, saying she must have been something special back then, which irritated Yura and made her demand that he be quiet. She called his name sternly and told him their conversation was over. The intruders had already reached her palace, and she offered to grant him a peaceful death if he wished, but he refused. With a smile, he said he wanted to witness everything to the very end. Just then, the leader of the Muram Union, Guan Haiyan, approached them, saying he never imagined he would live to see the demon sect fall before his eyes. Yu Myung replied that Guan Haiyan had arrived with a traitor. Guan Haiyan laughed and said he was well aware of that. He gestured toward Han Mobaek and announced that his current title was the Sacred Heavenly Dragon, and that he had borne disgrace for the sake of Jianzhu. Yu Myung laughed loudly at the title and said he couldn't believe Han Mobaek had become a Muram lapdog with such a name. He insulted him outright, declaring it was time for them to pay for their sins. Yura, still drenched in sweat, responded mockingly, saying that her beloved husband had finally returned to her. Han Mobaek replied that everything he had done was for Jianzhu. Yura answered coldly, saying his actions had been for that society that dares to defy the heavens. Everyone around them was stunned by her words. It was the first time Yu Myung had heard of such a society. Han Mobaek panicked and shouted to everyone, warning them not to be deceived by the words of this witch, claiming she was simply trying to sow chaos in her final moments. The Muram soldiers believed him, saying no one should trust a demon's words, that she would say anything to save her life. Han Mobaek then said there was no need to fight her one by one, they should all attack at once. Yura shouted back that even while poisoned, she could handle the likes of them with ease, and without anyone's help. Guan Haiyan mocked her, saying she spoke with far too much confidence. But suddenly, a tremendous surge of energy burst from Yura's body. She was ready to face them. The Muram soldiers were stunned that she still possessed such power despite the poison. Sensing danger, Guan Haiyan ordered his men to attack immediately, and so the battle began. Yura, the leader of the demon sect, against the Muram Union forces. After a fierce fight, Yu Myung woke up from the blackout he had slipped into during the combat. Yura called out to him, saying she had feared he might have died. He was shaken by her deteriorating condition, but she continued, saying she was glad she had lived long enough to say goodbye. She added that the Muram forces had retreated after she activated her self-destruction technique. Then she looked at him and saw that he was crying. She asked him why, and he replied that he was overwhelmed with sorrow. Despite her body being riddled with wounds and pierced by swords, she stepped closer to him and asked if he would now keep his promise, and try to win her over instead of Han Mobaek. Yu Myung, still crying, assured her that he would keep that promise no matter what it cost him. Yura laughed softly, and told him she was glad to hear those words from him. Then she collapsed, and he rushed toward her, sobbing uncontrollably. He said those were his final moments in this life. His first life hadn't been that bad. He had saved humanity and earned the title, Guardian of Earth. As a reward, the ruler had granted him 3 privileges, including the ability to be revived twice more. He had originally planned to enjoy a carefree life, but after everything that had happened, he decided to dedicate this final life solely to Yura. When he awoke, he found his servant, Joe Chill, standing in front of him with a tray of food. He was stunned. One look at Joe Chill's youthful face, and he realized he had gone back in time, many years into the past. He watched as Joe Chill placed large amounts of food on the table, and at that moment, he heard a voice in his head. It told him that he now clearly remembered the exact point in time he had returned to. He was 17 again, just before he would head to the demon sect's tower and become known as the carefree playboy of the demonic bird. But fear took hold of him when he saw his father standing before him, because his father was furious at his behavior, including drinking, even though he hadn't yet reached the age of initiation. His father struck him hard, dragged him back home, and held up the liquor bottle, yelling that he couldn't believe the eldest son of the Yan family couldn't even resist alcohol. His father's name was Jin John, head of the family, and he looked at Yu Myung with clear disappointment, calling him a pitiful boy. Yu Myung quickly moved toward him, trying to explain what had happened, but his father ordered him to be silent, saying he didn't want to hear a word from someone so weak. He added that if someone chose to be weak, they should at least be clever. Then he asked if Yu Myung understood why he had personally come to bring him back home. Yu Myung thought to himself that last time, he hadn't answered, and got beaten for it. So this time, he replied that it was likely due to the upcoming meeting with the new leader of the demon sect. That meeting was with Yura, who at the time was also 17, along with the heirs of the 6 major demonic energy clans. It was a critical event to determine the next leader of the sect, but in his past life, none of the 6 heirs were chosen. Instead, Yura selected the traitor Han Mobaek during that event. Nervously, and with his father standing nearby, Yu Myung whispered to himself that this would not happen again. His father responded that the only reason he had tolerated someone so talentless in the family until now was for this exact moment. Yu Myung reflected internally that Jin John was a harsh father, one who used his sons solely for the glory of the clan. His father then asked whether he would be able to win the heart of the sect leader before the other heirs. With full confidence, Yu Myung said the other heirs didn't stand a chance. His father smiled, pleased by the answer, and told him that if he didn't want to bring shame to their name, he should at least improve a little and begin learning martial arts. Then he left. As soon as he was gone, Yu Myung took a deep breath, saying he never expected his father to be the first person he'd see after returning to the past. He added that this moment in time was exactly what he had hoped for, not 10 years in the past, but 20. That gave him countless opportunities to make the most of. Then he recalled Yura's words about the society that defies the heavens, saying that this group must still be active in the present timeline. And with growing anger, he vowed to hunt them down himself and wipe them out completely. Zhou Chen asked Yu Myung what he planned to do now. Yu Myung replied with a question of his own, asking what he meant by that. Zhou Chen reminded him that just moments ago, he had boldly responded to his father and declared that he would become the future husband of the demon sect's leader. Yu Myung was surprised and asked when he had said anything like that. Zhou Chen insisted that's exactly what he just said, but Yu Myung objected, explaining that he had never claimed he'd be her husband. All he said was that the other heirs would be rejected. Zhou Chen looked puzzled and told him that it meant the same thing, but Yu Myung corrected him, saying the two statements were very different. He added that Yura, at this point in her life, was impossible to win over. She was entirely obsessed with mastering martial arts and wouldn't waste a single moment with someone weaker than her. Just then, a young man approached, saying he hadn't expected Yu Myung to still be here. Yu Myung tried to remember who he was. Then he realized it was Ma Cheol, the second son of the Blood Dragon clan. Ma Cheol walked up with an irritated tone and asked if Yu Myung saw any resemblance between him and someone else. Yu Myung said he didn't, and asked if he was so excited that he came alone without bringing young he. Ma Cheol snapped, saying he didn't have a younger sister by that name. He then announced he had come to challenge Yu Myung to a duel. Yu Myung was confused. This had never happened in his past life. He wondered if this was because his father hadn't hit him like he did last time, so now something unexpected was unfolding. The demon sect was governed by 6 major clans in addition to the sect itself. Among them, the relationship between Yu Myung's clan and the Blood Dragon clan was the worst of all. Yu Myung replied that inter-clan conflicts were strictly forbidden. Ma Cheol said this time was an exception. Yu Myung asked what kind of exception he was talking about. Yu Myung thought to himself that unless it was a matter of a clan's survival or an official duel, then it must involve the main clan, Cheon. He then asked if this was because of the demon sect's leader. Ma Cheol confirmed it, adding that if he lost this duel, he would withdraw from the sect leader's engagement ceremony. Yu Myung remembered that Ma Cheol's younger brother was also a participant in that ceremony. With a mocking tone, he agreed to the madness. He pushed further, asking if his brother was so weak that he needed to eliminate the competition just to stand a chance. Ma Cheol grew furious, but Yu Myung continued, saying there was no need to push himself unless he wanted to turn the match into an all-out conflict between the two clans. Enraged, Ma Cheol lunged at him, telling him not to mock him. Seeing his intention, Zhou Chen placed a hand on his sword, ready to intervene if needed. But Yu Myung stopped him, instructing him not to interfere under any circumstances. He thought to himself that this would be the first time he used his special ability, the awakening of the senses he had possessed in his first life as humanity's savior. The scene shifted to Zhou Chen, who was extremely worried. He told Yu Myung that he didn't even know martial arts. How could he possibly face someone like Ma Cheol? Yu Myung continued thinking to himself, acknowledging that while his awakened senses might not be enough to face the leader of the Blood Dragon clan, things were entirely different when the opponent was just a young man. He then easily gripped the blade and thought that all he wanted right now was to crush Ma Cheol. Zhou Chen was stunned when he saw Yu Myung assume a perfect stance and block the strike without a single error. After deflecting Ma Cheol's sword, Yu Myung kicked him hard. Zhou Chen was amazed at how quickly and effortlessly Ma Cheol had been defeated, especially considering that just yesterday, Yu Myung had been a careless youth with no skills or experience in martial arts. Yu Myung then called out to the hidden spectators and told them to take Ma Cheol away. He warned them that Ma Cheol would likely be in shock when he woke up, so they had better stop him from causing any trouble, unless of course they wanted him to go around telling people how brutally he'd been beaten. They agreed to do as he asked, but just before leaving, he added one final thing. He reminded them that he had shown restraint and avoided leaving any visible marks. Inwardly, he thought that even a rumor about the heir of the Jin clan defeating the heir of the Ma clan would be disastrous, and he wouldn't let that happen. The scene shifted to Yu Myung's return to the clan residence, where all the members gathered to welcome him back. The head steward asked if he had enjoyed his brief trip with his friends. Yu Myung replied that it was hard to give a straight answer, as he couldn't exactly tell anyone that his father had come to fetch him personally, though the steward surely already knew that. Jokingly, he added that the steward could be quite blunt sometimes. The steward smiled and replied that he had simply been concerned for his health. Yu Myung told him to forget about it and requested access to the training room. The steward was stunned and asked if he truly intended to start learning martial arts. Other clan members were also surprised, wondering if he was serious about training. He assured them he wasn't joking and asked them to fetch specific martial arts scrolls from the clan's library. He began listing the scrolls he wanted, recalling how his teacher once told him that mastering those skills would make him unbeatable. Back then, he had replied that those scrolls weren't originals, but mere copies. His teacher had explained that these techniques never had the chance to shine because they had ended up in the hands of Jin clan members who were obsessed solely with brute strength. After obtaining the scrolls, Yu Myung noted that he was able to access them only because the library hadn't yet burned down. It would be destroyed in 4 years. He explained that the Jin clan's fighting fighting style focused heavily on punches and kicks, which didn't suit him. However, he had a natural talent, sharp intuition, and a strong foundation of internal energy. He added that while he might never meet his teacher again in this life, he would become the fighter his master had always dreamed of. He then remembered the promise he made to the demon sect's leader about seducing her, but with sadness, he admitted that he couldn't fulfill it right now. His current abilities weren't enough to win her favor. He said he would need just 5 years, 5 years in complete isolation, devoting himself fully to mastering martial arts. Once he grew stronger, he would personally hunt down the wretches from the society that defies the heavens, eliminating them one by one, so that when the day came for Yura to rise as the leader of the demon sect, no one would ever be able to threaten her rule again. 2 weeks later, the scene shifts to Yu Myung walking alongside his servant, Jo Chil, who seemed irritated by how slowly Yu Myung was moving. Yu Myung explained that since he'd be the last in line anyway, there was no need to rush. When they reached the gate and the guards opened it, they expressed their annoyance at his extremely late arrival. Jo Chil reminded him that this event was being hosted by the Cheon clan, the main clan, and that such behavior was unacceptable. Yu Myung calmly replied that if anything went wrong, he'd handle it himself. He then recalled how, after failing at the engagement ceremony in his past life, his father had locked him up for a full year. Suddenly, someone came flying through the air in front of them. Yu Myung chuckled, saying it was a rather intense greeting, while Jo Chil remarked that it looked like someone had just been properly beaten. As the smoke cleared, a figure in red robes appeared. It was Ma Yun, the younger brother of Ma Cheol from the Blood Dragon clan. They heard Yura's voice calling out to Ma Yun, saying he seemed like he might be useful to her. She asked if he still had the strength to continue fighting. Ma Yun quickly got to his feet and ran toward her, saying he still had enough energy left. At that moment, Yu Myung's eyes met Yura's. He looked visibly bothered and thought to himself that, unfortunately, he hadn't arrived as late as he'd hoped. Meanwhile, Jo Chil was close to losing his temper, and asked how he could joke at a time like this. Yu Myung replied that he only wanted to watch the show. He remembered that in the previous timeline, Ma Yun had been defeated by Yura with a single strike, and disappeared afterward. But this time, something felt different. As Ma Yun launched a full-force attack at Yura, she blocked it effortlessly. She said with excitement that his skill level was better than she had expected. Yu Myung was surprised, wondering if Ma Yun had truly become this strong. But before he could think any further, Ma Yun was already lying on the ground. His servants rushed to check on him, and even as he lay there, he called out to Yu Myung. Yu Myung was confused by the gesture. Then Ma Yun declared that he would never lose to him. He turned back to Yura and told her that fighting her had been an honor. She replied that she hoped his level would improve the next time they met. Yu Myung found the whole exchange strange, thinking Ma Yun should have been rejected outright. Yura then ordered Ma Yun to head to the medical center for treatment. He lit up with joy at her words. But as he walked past Yu Myung, he shot him a glare full of hostility. Yu Myung was taken aback. This was the first time they'd met in this life, so he didn't understand the animosity. Yura then approached him and called out, saying she had been waiting for him for quite some time. Yu Myung froze upon hearing her voice, and was stunned to realize she had truly been expecting him. She pointed her sword at him and remarked that Ma Yun had shown decent skill. She added that since he had defeated his older brother, he was supposed to be far stronger. It was then that Yu Myung understood the reason behind Ma Yun's glares. Yura went on, saying that if he didn't meet her expectations, she would be deeply disappointed. Yu Myung commented that the real issue with the demon sect was that they tried to solve everything through brute force. Yura suddenly launched a swift attack, aiming for his head right from the start. He thought this was supposed to be a sparring match, but it seemed like she was actually trying to kill him. That's when he realized how lenient she had been with Ma Yun. She continued her assault, swinging her sword with serious intent. He shouted at her, calling her a madwoman, and begged her to calm down a little. Yura was deeply offended when Yu Myung called her a madwoman. He immediately tried to fix what he said, assuring her he hadn't meant it like that. But Yura showed no sign of understanding. She told him that since he had used such a word, he would now have to face the edge of her sword. Yu Myung began stepping back, blocking her strikes as best he could. But the more he defended, the more irritated Yura seemed. He grew nervous as he noticed sparks flying and her rage intensifying. Suddenly she lunged at him, shouting and demanding how he dared to hide his true power all this time. Yu Myung panicked. He had no idea how she figured out he was holding back. Then, to his shock, she unleashed her sword aura. He thought to himself that she had only been defending against Ma Yun earlier, but now she was fighting him with real force, using her sword aura. The blow was so powerful it sent him flying back. He crashed to the ground, and Yura walked toward him, saying she knew he was only pretending to be defeated to hide his true strength. Still furious, she demanded that he stop the act and fight seriously. Yu Myung, trying to sound pitiful, replied that he never faked his fights, and had already used all the strength he had. But Yura grew even more frustrated, and asked why he continued to deny that he was holding back. In his mind, Yu Myung recalled their encounter from his previous life, telling himself that he hadn't faked anything. He just didn't care about winning this fight. At that moment, Yura unleashed an even fiercer wave of sword aura, declaring that if he was trying to deceive her, she wouldn't hesitate to kill him, just like he seemed to want. Jo Chil, watching nearby, trembled in fear for his master's life. He thought that if Yu Myung failed to block this next attack, he would surely die. Yura then charged with everything she had. Yu Myung responded by using every technique he had learned to defend himself. To his surprise, he managed to block every one of her strikes. When Yura stepped back for a moment, Yu Myung couldn't believe he had survived her assault, though his sword was still shaking in his grip. But Yura quickly laughed and told him he hadn't blocked anything at all. He was stunned, realizing how truly outmatched he was. Despite being only 18, Yura was already capable of using advanced sword aura. He had always known she was far beyond her peers, but to have reached such a level at her age was almost impossible. He shut his eyes, preparing himself for the final blow. But when he opened them again, he realized he was still alive. He heard a sharp voice scolding Yura, saying she had lost control of her emotions and nearly killed the boy with that last attack. Yu Myung was stunned to see the man behind the voice. He immediately bowed. It was Taejong, the former clan leader. Taejong continued speaking to Yura, warning her that she had nearly triggered a holy war between the clans. Yu Myung noted that Taejong was the third person in the sect's long history to be given the title of Supreme Sovereign. He was also the 28th leader of the sect and its current Grand Elder. Taejong told Yura that if a holy war were to break out with the Jin clan, their allies would intervene instantly. At that point, the sect's forces would be scattered, and the Murim alliance would be waiting for exactly such a moment to strike. Yu Myung thought to himself that Taejong might have been exaggerating a little, but he hadn't said anything untrue. He also added mentally that Yura probably didn't realize one crucial fact. His father, Jin Jan, the leader of the Jin clan, would never start a civil war just because he lost hope in a son, and that son ended up dead. Taejong asked Yura to apologize to Yu Myung. It was clear this request was incredibly difficult for her, but in the end, she had no choice but to obey. She gave him a reluctant apology, her face still filled with anger. Yu Myung responded by saying it was nothing, as if nothing had happened. Inwardly, he muttered that he never imagined he'd witness the day when the cold-hearted leader of the demon sect would apologize to anyone. Taejong then turned to Yu Myung and said it seemed the Jin clan had raised a respectable heir, asking if he was the candidate the clan had sent. Yu Myung respectfully replied that the clan had deemed him unfit, and its leader had chosen to give the position of heir to his younger brother instead. Taejong was stunned by the answer and asked in disbelief how someone with his strength could be considered unfit, especially when he was certain Yu Myung had used sword aura during his fight with Yura. Taejong scoffed and asked mockingly, "Can someone unqualified display that kind of power?" He asked again if Yu Myung was really not the clan's official heir. Yu Myung insisted it was true, explaining that he was only here to fulfill what the Jin clan saw as its duty. Taejong replied that, in that case, he should see that duty through to the end, leaving Yu Myung confused. As he walked away, Taejong said that when the next exchange meeting was scheduled, the Jin clan would be notified. He added that he hoped Yu Myung and Yura would get along better next time they met. When he noticed Yu Myung staying silent, he gave him a sharp look and asked why he wasn't answering. Yu Myung replied respectfully that he understood, but inside, he felt like his fate had just been sealed. As he walked off, Taejong muttered to himself that it had been a long time since his last meeting with the Jin clan leader. Perhaps it was time to visit and share a drink. After that, Yura told Yu Myung that she knew he hated her, and that was why he acted the way he did earlier. But he cut her off. He told her he didn't hate her at all. On the contrary, he admired her. He quickly clarified, saying it wasn't romantic admiration. It could be seen as respect, too. He added that his actions today had nothing to do with her personally. Yura asked him to relax a bit, saying that during exchange periods they were equals, so he didn't have to address her so formally. Yu Myung was stunned and asked what she wanted him to call her. She didn't seem to have a clear answer. He told her he had a suggestion. He'd simply call her Yura from now on. The scene shifted to Yu Myung leaving with Jo Chil, who began praising him enthusiastically, saying his performance today was incredible, and that his father would be thrilled when he heard the news. But Yu Myung looked displeased. His plan to enter seclusion and train had clearly failed. Then, to his surprise, his brother, Yoon Woo, appeared. Yu Myung laughed and asked why he came in person. Yoon Woo replied that he heard Yu Myung had gone to the training room before heading to the young demon's hall. He added that he was sure Yu Myung wasn't aiming for the heir position. Yu Myung confirmed it and said he understood the rules well. Yoon Woo responded that there was no rule preventing someone from building a relationship with the young leader of the demon sect. Then, nervously, he said he would never acknowledge Yu Myung as his brother, and that he didn't belong to the Jin clan. Seeing the rising tension, Jo Chil stepped in and tried to calm Yoon Woo down, saying he'd gone too far, and that Yu Myung had shown incredible skill today. But Yoon Woo exploded at him too, shouting that a former assassin had no right to meddle in a conversation between two heirs of the Jin clan. He insisted that matters like this should only involve those who carry the clan's pure blood. Yu Myung looked visibly irritated by his brother's words, feeling like he had become a genuine nuisance to him. He thought to himself that he might need to raise his brother all over again. Yoon Woo scoffed and laughed, saying he must be joking, but Yu Myung silently decided that his younger brother, who would one day lead the clan, needed to learn how to show him proper respect. Yu Myung snapped his fingers and said they had never fought before. Yoon Woo immediately lunged at him, but Yu Myung dodged easily. Furious, Yoon Woo accused him of running away like a rat. Yu Myung mockingly replied that the real problem was his brother's inability to land even a single hit. Yoon Woo's anger exploded as he released his aura and threatened to kill him. Yu Myung scolded him, asking how he could speak that way to his older brother, and reminded him that it was his duty to show respect. He then said he was fighting him for 3 reasons. While dodging his strikes, he explained that the first reason was this. Though Yoon Woo had been selected as one of the 6 demon dragons, he needed to understand there would always be someone stronger. Then Yu Myung landed a direct blow to his stomach and said the second reason was, Yoon Woo had dared to insult the honor of the Jin clan, a clan he was meant to lead someday. The clan members watching were stunned, wondering when this once weak boy had become so powerful. After a thorough beating, Yoon Woo apologized and said he'd take Yu Myung's advice to heart. He added that losing today didn't mean he would accept the same outcome in their next match. But Yu Myung stopped him, saying he hadn't even revealed the third reason yet. Yoon Woo froze and nervously asked what it was. Yu Myung replied with a chilling expression that the third reason was simple. Yoon Woo had yet to learn what true respect for an older brother looked like. Yoon Woo trembled and almost cried, admitting that he just didn't know how to express that respect. but Yoon Young didn't stop until he'd finished disciplining him. The scene shifted to the Jin clan leader, sipping his drink and telling Yoon Young that the demon sect leader hadn't stopped praising him. He added that he had personally thanked him for sending someone with talent worthy of challenging his daughter. He then asked if Yoon Young wanted to become the clan's heir. Yoon Young replied that he preferred for Yoon Woo to remain in that position, as he had proven his worth more clearly before the clan. He added that his own goal was to serve the demon sect's leader and always remain by her side, elevating the clan's status through that. The clan leader replied that he never realized his son held such pride in the family. Yoon Young responded that while other clans fight over their heirs, he and his brother would focus on building a strong foundation for the next generation, one that would make their clan the greatest of the six. His father was delighted by the idea, and asked if he truly thought he could make it happen. Yoon Young answered confidently that he could. The clan leader beamed and said his son had matured a lot lately, and as his father, he would give him the support he deserved. Then he asked if Yoon Young had any wishes. Later, Yoon Young walked through the city, telling himself that since his plan to enter secluded training had failed, he now needed to begin searching for the true identity of the society that defies the heavens. He thought that the current leader of the demon sect ruled with tyranny, so the organization must be operating in secret. He began narrowing down the possibilities, trying to determine which of the great clans might be behind the group, but found no clear answers yet. He concluded that whatever he discovered during his investigation could become a key piece, leverage he could one day use against Yura. Then he turned to his brother, who had been silently trailing him, and asked why he had been following him all this time. Yoon Woo, munching on an apple, replied that he was just really curious about what Yoon Young had been doing all this time to grow so strong. Yoon Young looked puzzled, unsure whether it was a good idea to bring his brother along or not. He eventually replied while continuing to walk, saying all he needed to do was take care of his body, and strength would come with time. But Yoon Woo quickly caught up to him again, and asked where they were headed. Yoon Young told him they were going to the black market. Yoon Woo was shocked at the answer, saying the black market was known for dealing in illegal goods, and they'd likely run into the kind of people who made their own laws. Yoon Young replied that he needed to remember something important about the demon sect. The word illegal didn't exist here. It was simply that there were things the sect didn't want ordinary people to know about, so they kept them hidden. In short, the black market was under the influence of one of the major clans. The place they were headed was the Hidden Gold Pavilion. It was the base that controlled the entire black market. Once there, and as people gathered inside the pavilion, they welcomed Yoon Young and his brother and asked about the reason for their visit. Yoon Young answered with a sarcastic tone that they were obviously there for something shady, and he requested to meet the person in charge. The man he spoke to gave him a sly look and introduced himself as Oh Jong, leader of the Hidden Gold Pavilion. Yoon Young's tone suddenly turned serious. He told him that if he intended to deal with the eldest son of the Jin clan, there should have been a representative from the Sa clan present. Oh Jong was taken aback and asked how he knew about that. Yoon Young feigned confusion and asked what he meant, then added, as if guessing, "Do you mean you're surprised I know this is the intelligence base for the Sa clan?" Oh Jong's face turned pale at those words. He released his aura and demanded to know, clearly this time, where did Yoon Young get that information? But Yoon Young smacked him across the face, saying he was incredibly rude and clearly didn't know how to show proper respect to his elders, though he had no trouble hitting them. He asked how a mere servant of the Sa clan dared to release killing intent at him, then ordered him to reveal the weapon hidden in his clothes. At that moment, a girl intervened, stopping Yoon Young and telling him that what he'd done was enough. She was Sabyun, a direct descendant of the Sa clan. She seemed shocked that Yoon Young knew things even some members of her own clan didn't, and wondered if the Jin clan's intelligence network was superior to theirs. She then asked what brought him here. Yoon Young explained that lately, strange things had been happening in the Red Lantern district and the back alleys. He said the name that kept coming up was Dark Blood. The moment he uttered the name, both Sabyun and Oh Jong looked stunned. Sabyun asked how he knew about that. He replied that one of the girls he'd been spending time with had opened up to him a lot. Sabyun grew irritated, asking if everything he knew came from a girl. He clarified that dark blood was a disease that would soon spread across the demon sect. He added that someone was orchestrating these events on purpose. Sabyun, her expression filled with sorrow, said that dark blood was something that had originated from outside the sect. Despite all the support she had received from her clan, they hadn't been able to trace its source. She added that their closest guess was that a subsidiary sect tied to one of the major clans was behind it. When Yoon Young heard Sabyun's response, he turned to his younger brother and said he had expected more precise intel from the Sa clan's intelligence network. Then he told him it was time to leave. But before they could go, Sabyun called out to him. Yoon Young immediately realized his plan had worked. He turned and asked what she wanted. She told him she had agreed to share their findings with him, and that they would send a representative to the Jin clan for further discussions. Yoon Young smiled and thanked her, assuring her he would take full responsibility from this point onward. Then he left the pavilion. The scene shifted to Yura, who was recalling a conversation with her father. He had mentioned that Yoon Young didn't appear to be fighting at full strength during their match. She had asked if he was sure Yoon Young was taking the fight seriously. Her father responded that it might sound strange, but Yoon Young's eyes weren't focused on winning or even the fight itself. His gaze was fixed entirely on her. Back in the present, Yura admitted emotionally that hearing that from her father had made her start thinking about Yoon Young in a different light. The scene then moved to Yunro Valley, a lawless area that most clans avoided at all costs. Yoon Young told one of the Sa clan's intelligence agents that if you want to catch a tiger, you have to step into its den. The agent nervously replied that they might end up being eaten inside that den. Yoon Young replied he could go report that cowardice to Sabyun, prompting the agent to quickly apologize and follow him silently. He then asked if Yoon Young really expected to gather intel in a place like this. Yoon Young raised a finger to his nose and told him to watch closely. Sometimes it's easier to get information in places like these. As they walked through the valley, Yoon Young said he had the distinct feeling that someone had been watching them for a while. He added that if that surveillance continued continued after they entered deeper into the valley, he wouldn't let it slide. They soon noticed a large number of plants growing all around, and wondered if someone was cultivating them. The agent commented that he felt strangely drawn to the place, and added that even if they were exiled from the sect, this valley had a strangely calming effect. Yoon-myung told him those plants were marijuana, and someone on the inside was clearly helping to maintain them. Suddenly, a group of men emerged and blocked their path. One of them commented mockingly that they had a lot of nerve walking into this place with such confidence. He warned them that if they didn't want trouble, they should leave immediately. Yoon-myung thought to himself that everyone in the group, except the boy standing in the middle, were nothing but low-grade thugs. He responded confidently, saying they weren't leaving, as he was here to meet their leader. The group's leader replied that he was planning to let them pass since they looked like nobles, but clearly they were asking for trouble. He then ordered his men to attack, telling them they could break their arms, or anything else. The agent nervously told Yoon-myung that combat wasn't his specialty. Yoon-myung replied that he hadn't expected anything from him to begin with, and added that if he died here, the rest of them would be in serious trouble.